to walk away with just the memories. Who's to know what might have been? We leave behind a life and time we'll never know again. Please remember. Please remember. I was there for you and you were there for me. And remember, please remember me. Please remember, please remember, I was there for you and you were there for me. Please remember our time together, when time was yours and mine, and we were wild and free. Then remember, please remember me, and how we laughed and how we smiled, and now this world was yours and mine, and now no dream was out of reach. I stood by you, you stood by me. We took each day and made it shine. We wrote our names across the sky. We ran so fast, we ran so free. I knew you had me. Please remember. Please remember.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Lapine here in Eltham. The music you hear this afternoon has been chosen especially by the family. And before we start our service, may I please ask those of you who have mobile phones to ensure that they're switched off. And if you haven't had an opportunity to mark your name down for the memorial book, if you could please do so at the end of the service. In coming weeks, it gives the family a chance to see those of you who are able to be here and support them on a very special day. Following the service, you're invited to join the family for refreshments at Leslie and Peter's place at 6 Nathan Road, and I think that's in the order of service there. If you have any doubts as to how to get there, you go down there. Second major thing, turn left, but I'm sure they'll tell you if you're in any doubt. We're here to give thanks for and to celebrate a generous, family-oriented, happy and loving life, to honour that life and to bid farewell to Gladys Elizabeth Stevens, known as Glad, sometimes as Liz, and I believe she liked calling people Blossom. On behalf of her family, thank you for being here to share this special service, to reflect on and to celebrate Glad's life. Her children, Leslie with Peter, Mark with Jackie, and Vicky with Alan, and grandchildren, Kelly with Eric, Jane with Andy, Adam with Rachel, Ashley and Courtney are among those family members joining us in honouring Glad. Grandchildren Karen, Nicholas and Lily are in Queensland, but they certainly join us in spirit. My name's Gregory Ross. It is my privilege to serve as funeral celebrant and to be working with Chris Brember, your funeral director. Just one of the purposes of our service is to honour what it meant for Glad to have lived and how she enriched us, her family and her friends. We've been brought together through her death to share our love, our respect for her, to say thank you to her for being the positive influence that she was. And while occasions like this are very much a time for grieving, they do also give us the opportunity to celebrate, to honour the life of someone very special to us. So while you may shed tears at her passing, do also remember those many happy memories that you have. This is very much a family service. And to celebrate Glad's wonderful life, we'll now hear from grandson Adam.
Gladys Stevens was born Gladys Elizabeth Main on the 28th of February 1921 in Carlton at the Women's Hospital to Clyde and Metta Main. She was sister to Rita, Clyde, Phoebe, Les and later Roy. She grew up in Northcote and attended Miller Street Primary School and finished school in Year 8, as was the custom at the time. Glad learned to swim in Northcote Bars and was an excellent swimmer. She was trained by her father and instructor, Mr. Fogg, and was successful enough to reach the Olympic squad, but lack of money and a world war intervened. Interestingly, Mr. Fogg was to teach Leslie to swim many years later. Late in Glad's life, she still liked to swim. She and Auntie Cathy would go to the pool to swim for therapy, both physical and for the spirit. She has always reported jumping off Princess Street Bridge with her singlet tucked between her swimsuit, but many of the family think that's an urban myth. Glad's early years were very hard, with her mother dying, and she was left with just Glad and Roy at a home with a father who was both physically and emotionally absent. This affected her attitude to her life for the rest of her life. Her older sister Phoebe later took Glad and Roy in. The importance of her relationship with her brothers and sisters provided her with great strength and gave her direction she took with her own family as it grew. Glad commenced work at the Yarra Falls Mill and later worked at the Davis Coop Mill, where she met Pa prior to the war. At this point, they were just friends. During the war, Glad and Pa wrote to each other while he was in New Guinea, still just only being friends. Sorry. Glad's efforts in writing to Pa during the war even suggested that it was part of her war effort to help out the troops. She viewed Pa as just a young friend who she hoped to help get through the war unscathed. Although as the war progressed, she gathered from the tone from Pa's letters that indicated it was more than feelings than a workmate. When Pa finally returned to Australia, he was still serving, but in North Queensland. Glad's hunch that his feelings were more than a friend were made true. This is because Pa went AWOL to find Glad and propose. Pa's very romantic gesture convinced Glad it was worth giving it a go and led to a long, loving marriage, which ended when Pa passed away. But for the 21 years Glad spent without him in body, but were not without thought. She missed him terribly and regularly told everybody what a wonderful man and husband he was. Early married years were spent living next door to Bill's family in Brunswick. Leslie was born in 1948, and shortly afterwards the young family moved to their long-term family home in Challier Street Reservoir. Mark was born in 1955 and then Vicky in 1958. Life was not easy in the early 50s. There was no mod cons. Glad did her washing in a copper, used an ice chest for food, and all food preparation was done by hand, which took up the most of her day. Transport was Shank's pony. Entertainment was always with family and friends who were Pa's army mates and their wives. And it was around the family, particularly with her sisters, Phoebe, Rita, and trips to Warrnambool to spend times with her favourite brother, Roy. Her middle years were spent in devout service to her family, Billy, Leslie, Mark, Vicky, and their fourth child, the Collingwood football team. Gladys' life was always focused on the children in the family. and although she was not comfortable socialising outside the family, her devotion to her children was epic. Gladys had a very dry and sometimes dark sense of humour. Often she would lean over to you and whisper a few words in your ear, adding to the conversation going on around you, and have you in stitches and no one else. Or in many other cases, just yell from the back of the room, normally during speeches. She often renamed people just to suit what she thought or what she could remember. In my case, I was changed to the lovingly term of little bastard. Or in my childhood best friend's Chiwe's name was changed to Dim Sim. Or if you're female, you were just known as Blossom. Behind this humour was always a great love for the grandchildren. Glad and Pa looked after the grandchildren a lot through our childhood, much to our pleasure. It was always a house full of love, laughs and turf cigarette smoke. Cal was Glad's first grandchild, who was as headstrong as then as she is now. So Glad had her hands full with her first grandchild, but she went to it like a duck to water. Cal wasn't the kind of kid who would passively entertain herself. She liked interaction. So one of her favourite games was that she would play Mrs. Murphy's shop. Cal would go and get a whole lot of Glad's pantry items and sell them back to Glad. Glad's seat was always right in front of the TV, and at 39 Charlie Street, right in front of the gas heater, with a coffee table next to her and a pedestal ashtray for a permanently burning cigarette. Cal would spend hours setting up her shop on a card table next to the heater so she could make her purchases right from the comfort of her armchair. We were not quite sure what truly led to the end of this game between Cal and Glad. Kelly claims that Glad couldn't add up, while Glad claimed something about exorbitant and inflation at Mrs. Murphy's shop. But by the time these claims were being made, Kelly had a younger sister to boss around, and Glad was free to cook us wonderful meals, desserts, pancakes we all adored, without shopping at Mrs. Murphy's exorbitant prices. Also, there was always a giant change jar to be spread out on the floor and divvied up between your sisters and to go and get lollies from the corner shop. Often she would get us in a taxi that in her mind was always going to rip us off in the 2 blocks to Northland Shopping Centre. She would take us to the latest blockbuster movie, which she could not stand, and she would fill her ears with cotton wool, although you would hear about how bloody stupid it was on the way home. But that was her, and she would do anything for us kids. And whenever she spoke to you, you felt like you were her best friend and no one else's. Whenever I was being a pest, I was always told about the time Uncle Mark was found at the pool hall again when he was only 14, and how he had to come home and wait in bed for Billy to come home and give him the thrashing of his lifetime, and how I would get one too. I did hear that story almost every time because I was a little bastard, frequently deserving the promised hiding, which never came from Glad and Pa. Glad's love extended more so than ever to her family through her cooking. As children, there was always an extensive dessert menu to choose from. There would never be a problem for her to spend all day cooking, as long as you shared it with your sisters and didn't tell your mum. She was certainly the first Gordon Ramsay of the family, cooking for over 20 people every Christmas, being the first in the kitchen and the last out, and ordering any of the family various jobs as they wandered through the kitchen. She would also try new things. This would only be a problem when she forgot to put on her glasses, like the custard powder in the gravy incident. Some of my favourite meals that spring to mind are the staple lamb roast, trifle, lolly pudding, piles of pancakes, vanilla slices and curry sausages, amongst so much more. One of my favourite things was to sit and listen to her cook, because she had one of the most amazing singing whistles. It seemed like she knew every song that came out of her tired old black radio. Every part of the house was always filled with her whistling. It would always brighten up the most boring afternoon. She was amazing. But also amazing was her strong will. Right to the end, any person you ever heard talk about her would say she was a lovely old tough bird. and that's just what she was right to the end. Her will to struggle through will always forever inspire me. Her name was Gladys. She was a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and she was my nana, and I loved her. Thank you.
You think she wouldn't have loved that? From the swimming, from Mr. Fogg, she really was a fine swimmer, to jumping off, did you say Princess Bridge? Is that a fact? Maybe. The letters that she wrote as a friend to Bill during the war, to then his going on AWOL to propose to her, and leading on to their marriage till his death in 1987. I've never heard the Collingwood football team referred to as the fourth child. Very apt. And Kelly, Mrs. Murphy's shop, I'm sure it was you giving the inflated prices. I think there's a bit of truth in that. Wonderful memories. The movies that you shared together, and the cooking and the desserts, and you told me the other day just how wonderful that was. But you've added to that today, because you added her singing whistle as part of the recipe for that wonderful memories that you have. Thank you for those words. Now, to pay further tribute to Glad, we're going to hear from daughter Vicky, from granddaughter Jane, and then from longtime friend Julie Kiminello.
Hello everybody. I would like to share some memories of Mum with you from my perspective being the baby of the family. What's so significant today is it's the end of a generation. It's sad to know that part of our family, for many of us here today, is gone. But we have to remember and be happy that they are now reunited, all together, and after 21 years, Mum and Dad are together again. As I'm the youngest of the family, many of my memories are different to others. Being adopted, as I was, as was often discussed, as there was no baby pictures of me. Looking at the three of us now, Leslie, Mark and I know that not to be true. It's funny how we age, how we resemble Mum and Dad more and more. My earliest memories are of 39 Shelley Street, sharing a room with Leslie and Mark and I in the bunks, and Leslie in a bed of her own. And how special we thought it was when a room was added and Mark had his own room, and Leslie went to do her nursing and I had a room all to myself. I was a baby, so I was quite spoilt, I think, from Mum and Dad and my aunts, my sister Leslie and my cousin Kay. But of course, I was a perfect child. Not my words, theirs. I remember being taken here and there and having to perform my special singing and dancing routines, a 5'2" and baby face for different people. Seacourt, you got your special talents from your mum. But what I remember most is not having to do anything. Everything was always done by Mum. I never washed the dishes, I never made my bed, I never cooked or cleaned. Mum did it all. And it's only now as we get older that you realise how special it was. Another huge part of my memories, and that part of my family which I represent, is the Black and White Army, or the fourth child. Yes, you could call it brainwashing, I suppose, but I have vivid memories of being taken and sitting in front of the rider stand at Victoria Park every Saturday, rain, hail or shine, with all of my family. I loved it, and I still love it today. Mum and I would get on the tram every Saturday after the football, just the two of us coming home. We would get fish and chips as a special treat, and if Collingwood lost, my Collingwood clown would be nailed to the front door with a noose around its neck, courtesy of my brother or my father. The tradition still continues today, as if you asked some of the youngest members of our family, who some are here today, what their names are, they'll tell you it's Bucks or Dida. But truly, the fun and the laughter and the highs and lows we shared over the years are irreplaceable. Mum was a homebody, totally devoted to her family, firstly her children. She was always willing to stay home and mind the kids. Trace and Bin, so Kay and I could go to the footy, and Kelly and Jane, Adam and Ash, so we could continue to work. Mum didn't really like to socialise, but preferred her own company or that of her family. She was a great cook, and memories of waking up on the weekend to the wonderful smells of roast dinner and apple pies, just in time, of course, to watch World of Sport to relive the previous day's game. She supported us in our endeavours, she didn't criticise our mistakes, and made us feel loved and safe, which is the most important thing as a child. She taught us how to be mothers to our own children and to give them unconditional love, and they have all grown to be strong, independent, loving people. We're a tight-knit family, and I believe we all love and care for each other in our own way and are always willing to support each other when needed. We have our parents to thank for that, for helping us to all become the people we are, and I pay tribute to Mum and Dad.
Hello, and thank you for coming. Nana and I had a great relationship. I actively chose her company for a lot of my life. She would read me stories while I sat on her ample lap. I was always a willing participant in regular lolly runs up to the corner shop, where cherry ripes and turf cigarettes were often on the list. I also inherited and conquered her bad habits. Nana read The Little Match Girl to me once. I ran away to Vicky's room with the lime green wardrobe and climbed into Adam's cot to cry uncontrollably. I couldn't fathom my life without Nan. In the book, she becomes a shooting star. It seemed cold comfort in comparison to the warmth of Nan's love. Nan seemed really quite surprised by how distraught I was, as I'm sure she'd be really quite surprised by all the fuss we're making today. Nan was a very tolerant woman, easily accepting the changes in generations without open judgment. I lived with Nan twice. At first, while we were building Mum and Dad's place in Eltham, I shared a room with her at 12 years of age. She never complained about me playing a tape of a boy band, Bros, every single night as we fell asleep. I think she was happy for the company at the end of the day. At 20, I returned for a year when she came out of intensive care at Panch. I was in need of some intensive Nana loving myself, so it worked out really well for both of us. Nan even tolerated the presence of my 2 cats during that visit. If it meant providing a safe place of refuge for her family, Nan could put up with just about anything. Even a family of 5 of us in a 2-bedroom unit, it probably felt perfectly natural to a woman from the Depression era. There was never a bad time to call, visit or see Nan, something we could all aspire to, I think. Nan was incredibly proud of her children. I really want to say this, their families, and especially how much they'd achieved. It was beyond her wildest hopes for you all, although she worried that they were all running themselves into the ground, which they still do to this day. Whether they realised it, if Nana ever saw anyone or spoke with Auntie Kath on the phone, it was all that she ever talked about. She loved you all very much. If children are a sum of their parents, then I believe Nana and Pa must have been made of some pretty special stuff to produce my mum, Auntie Vic and Uncle Mark. Nan's sense of humour, as Ed said, always very black and dry. Making light of dire situations is a gift of her generation. One good example, when Nan moved into Trevi, which is a Greek-specific facility in Essendon, I went over to visit and we were having afternoon tea, and I said to her, "So Nan, how is it?" And she said, "Oh, food's not that great." I said, "All right." I said, "And what about the people? What are they like, Nan?" Because I thought she might be happy for some company. And she said, "Oh, they're all right, but there seems to be a lot of new Australians." I was like, "Nan, they're not that new." Nana and Pa were a funny couple. Nan ever resistant to Pa's ebullient, overflowing affections. When he'd come home squiffy from an RSL function and try to lay on the charm with her, he'd receive a "Get off me, Billy, I'm not a bloody beanbag," which was probably a fair call when he smelt like a brewery and Nan hadn't drank since 1942. There were so many other quiet times, though, where a clear affection appeared between them. A kiss on the forehead, a hand on the shoulder, subtle moments of connectedness. I always found life at Chellier Street to be calm and happy. It was a safe harbour for my whole life, where I was always welcome day or night. It was home. I spent as much time as I could at Nana and Pa's as a child, with the lure of Nana's excellent pancakes, the smell of Pa's roses, Daphne, and the apricot tree to drink in. The black and white telly to watch in Nan's room, and the promise of Nan's lamb stew for tea. I will forever cherish your presence in my life, Nan, and keep you in my heart where you live on forever.
Hi everybody, my name's Julie Ciminello. Is that okay? Don't need it? It's okay. Gladys has been a very special friend for the past 22 years, since Laura and I moved into Unit 2 at 45 Chellier Street. Laura was just 15 months old when we arrived at our new home, and it was brand new. We were very excited and we were greeted by Gladys and Bill with great enthusiasm. Laura used to stand at the lounge room window as a toddler. She'd only just begun to walk, and Bill used to walk right up to the lounge room window and knock on the window, and he did that every day, every morning when Laura was standing there, and she just loved it. And when Bill passed away, Laura had a doll, and she called the doll Bill. It was just a little soft toy. And when Bill passed away, I began to see more of Gladys. I didn't really know Gladys very much before then, but after Bill passed away, we shared lots of lovely chats together, and she talked about Bill a lot, about her family, about her siblings, and growing up in Northcote. During the summer months, we shared evenings chatting while sweeping up outside and watering the garden. Glad took the morning watering shift and did it with such joy whilst whistling along the way. Gladys also watered the garden with great gusto. I was often awakened early in the morning to a loud, great spray of water on my bedroom window and flying soil that pictures used to hit the water so hard. Hence, we had a very lovely, colourful spray of garden, which, as you all know, Gladys just loved flowers. And she used to sit out on the front veranda, and she was very excited when we had a really good spray in the garden. I think that's what you call a lovely arrangement. Laura and her friends spent many weekends and afternoons playing in the driveway. The children were allowed to play all the way down the driveway to the back fence. So they were allowed to play from Gladys' back fence up to the front gate, and they weren't allowed to go any further. But Glad was welcome, for them to be playing in her garage, on the veranda, wherever they felt they needed to play. Glad would sit on her white chair on the front porch, and she cheered and clapped with the kids, whatever they were playing. The more fun and laughter, the better. And then the children would come inside for a drink or whatever, and then they'd say, "Can we go to Glatty's?" That's with a double T. "Can we all go to Glatty's house and get lollies?" I never had very many lollies at home, but Glatty always had lots. And I think every child that ever played at our house knew who Glatty was, because Glatty was always there. And I just recall one story. Laura got rollerblades, much to my, I wasn't very happy about getting the rollerblades. Glad was really happy when she saw Laura on the rollerblades, but there must have been lots of people buying rollerblades, so there was no padding. And she said, "Bloss, you can't go on the rollerblades without the padding." So she took Laura inside and she wrapped bandages, the big hospital bandages, around her elbows and around her knees so that she could ride the rollerblades. And I think Gladys probably held on to her more than I held on to it, because I didn't want her to have them anyway. Gladys was always happy to share Laura and my family news. She was always very happy to hear of Laura's school achievements, her sporting achievements. She just became so much part of our life. As Gladys became more frail, Laura and I used to stop in each day and say hello to make sure she was okay, and Laura would go and sit with her after school for a short while and have a chat. And I think they were special times for Gladys and for Laura. Laura and I then followed Gladys to her various hostel accommodations in Eltham, Essendon, Lilydale. Gladys always reminded me if my visit was overdue. I think when she first moved, I think I used to go once a week, and then I think when she was at Essendon it was once a fortnight, and if it was more than that, she would remind me when I arrived that the visit was overdue, because she obviously, had it all down pat when I was supposed to be there. And as she deteriorated, it was a little harder, as you know, to have a conversation with her, but you could always get a little better conversation if you talked about her old memories. As anyone who's frail and elderly, I guess that's what happens. And a few weeks ago when I was there, she was very upset, and I was very sad to see my old friend distressed. And I don't think there was football on the TV that day, so I turned the rugby on. Well, she didn't want to watch the rugby. She wasn't up for that. And I was sort of trying to fill in the time, and I said, oh, come on, let's talk about old times. And I honestly couldn't remember her sister's name at that point. And I said, oh, what's your sister's name? And she said, Phoebe. I said, of course it's Phoebe. And I said, and what was Phoebe's husband's name? Harry. I said, that's right, I remember now. So for a fleeting minute on my last visit, my old friend came back to chat for a little while. Excuse me. Gladys, sorry. Laura and I will miss you, our lovely, special friend. Our love goes with you today and always. We love you very much.
Well done to the three of you. Vicky, you said the end of a generation. Well, at least you have plenty of newcomers, different generations to come. So that's not ending in that way very much. The singing and the dancing that you were forced on you, but those times shared at Victoria Park, the tram rides and the fish and chips. Mind you, when you're waking up smelling the roast and getting up to watch World of Sport, that means you've slept in a lot. Jane, the many stories you shared, the lolly runs, the sharing a room as a 12-year-old and then as a 20-year-old back when you were 20. You said the humour, black and dry. I thought it'd be black and white, but black and dry. But what you also said is that for a family to visit, there was never a bad time. Always welcome. Julie, for you and Laura, since 14 months old, so much time shared, chatting, nothing like a good spray, and Glatty with her lollies and helping with the rollerblading. They're great memories. And thank you for those who've added so much to this service. So we've heard a good deal about Glad's life from a family perspective through to her interests, her activities, and no doubt for you here, there'll be other things, personal things which will make her memory special for you. She was very much a home and family-oriented person. We've heard that. She had a great love for children. A woman extremely generous of spirit, with a great and sometimes dark sense of humour. A person of her generation who was proud of her role as a mother, was an excellent cook and a lover of pies. The pies. Glad was a loving daughter and sister, a devoted and loving wife, mother, mother-in-law, grandmother and great-grandmother, and to those who knew her, a marvellous friend. And she'll be sadly missed, but most fondly and happily remembered. Daughter Leslie will now present a reading which has been chosen especially for today's service.
This reading's on behalf of Kelly, and Gal's choice as what this would represent for Mum. Home sweet home, mid pleasures and palaces though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. A charm from the skies seems to hallow us there, which seek through the world is ne'er met with elsewhere. Home, home, home sweet home, there's no place like home. Oh, there's no place like home. An exile from home, splendid dazzles in vain. Oh, give me my lowly thatched cottage again. The birds sing gaily, they come at my call. Give me them and the peace of mind, dearer than all. Home, home, home sweet home. There's no place like home. Oh, there's no place like home. I gaze on the moon as I tread the dear wild, and I feel that my mother now thinks of her child, as she looks at that moon from her own cottage door, through the woodbine whose fragrance shall cheer me no more. Home, home, home sweet home, there's no place like home. Oh, there's no place like home. How sweet 'tis it to sit neath a fond father's smile, and the caress of a mother to soothe and beguile. Let others delight mid new pleasures to roam, but give me, oh give me the pleasures of home. Home, home, home sweet home, there's no place like home. Oh, there's no place like home. To thee I'll return, overburdened with care. The heart's dearest solace will smile on me there. No more from that cottage again will I roam. Be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Home, home, home sweet home. There's no place like home, and there is no place like home. And Mum, you don't get to go home. Finally.
Thank you, Leslie, and for Kelly. There's no place like home. Well, you'd think we were going to have somewhere over the rainbow now, but the Wizard of Oz, in fact, we're not. Because we're going to watch some photos of Glad taken through her life, but as we do this, we'll listen to Bill's favourite song for her. And as we do this, you may wish to reflect on your own thoughts and memories of Glad and of the times that you shared.
Unforgettable, that's what you are. Unforgettable, though near or far. Like a song of love that clings to me, how the thought of you does things to me never before. Has someone been more unforgettable in every way? And forevermore, that's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too. unforgettable in every way. And forevermore, that's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
She had a great smile. Friends, unless standing is difficult, will you now please stand as we farewell Glad? Not yet. Not yet. While we enter and leave this world with nothing, the memories we leave behind with our family and friends are a mark of what we achieved. With caring and with love, we pay our last respects to Glad Stevens. We celebrate her life, her generosity of spirit, and all that she's given us. And we'll remember Glad from those happy memories she leaves with us. You will remember her as a living presence, and nothing can take away the love, the friendship, and those good times that you shared. And those memories will bring you strength and help you in your grieving. These are the reflections to treasure. Gladys Elizabeth Stevens, Glad, we bid you farewell. May you rest in peace.